And on the subject of ticket prices, Mark Shapiro, the chief operating officer for TKO, made some news this week with his comments at the annual Goldman Sachs Communicopia and Technology Conference, saying the WWE is not where the UFC is yet on ticket yield. We have work to do there, he says. Yes, they don't believe ticket prices are high enough. They may be going even higher soon. He said, we know we have a lot of room there because Vince McMahon was primarily pricing tickets for families and wasn't totally focused on maxing the opportunity there. Now that we've seen what we can do with UFC, we're replicating that in terms of ticket yield and holding back and advanced sales when it comes to the WWE side, and it's working out really well. I was not familiar with the term ticket yield. It is a pricing strategy that takes into account multiple factors that affect pricing and demand, and it's a measure of the average revenue generated per ticket sold, with the goal of selling all inventory for a given event at the right mix of prices. So basically, you divide the total income from ticket sales by the number of tickets sold, and that gives you your ticket yield. Shapiro has said previously that TKO sees tremendous upside in increasing ticket prices. And an example that he used on Wednesday was UFC shattering previous records to become the highest grossing event in the history of Chicago's United Center. Site fees continue to be a key focus of TKO, with Shapiro saying that they need to sell out their inventory of UFC numbered events, in addition to WWE PLEs, before moving on to UFC Fight Nights, WWE Raw, and SmackDown events. He said they are talking to Atlanta, Charlotte, Detroit, London, Paris, and that there are no shortage of countries that want to see them bring their show to town. He said that they will continue to maximize those opportunities with both in-kind deals, goods and services, but that the most important to me, he says, is cash. Cash kills. He also had a warning of sorts for places that are successful when WWE or UFC come to town, especially for the smaller events, using UFC Fight Nights as an example. He said, if we have a St. Louis going up against the Des Moines, Iowa, and you want us back there and you've broken records and sold out both your arenas, you have to pay for us to come back, or else we'll take it to another town. And that goes for NXT, Raw, and SmackDown on the WWE side. You know, it's not often that someone says Vince McMahon, the man who stomped out countless territories when he was expanding nationally, wasn't ruthless enough when it comes to business. According to Shapiro, Vince wasn't pricing his tickets high enough because he wanted to keep it affordable for families. And that might be true, but also keep in mind, WWE was not doing the kind of business that they're doing now, 3 or 4 years ago when Vince was still in charge. They were doing well, but they weren't doing this well. Given the chance to charge more if the demand was there, I don't think he would have hesitated to raise prices at least a little bit. I don't think he would have lowered them. But I do think that he probably would have been more cautious about pricing people out of coming to a WWE event. TKO doesn't care about that. All they care about is maximizing the here and now. What they are doing is they are pricing out a generation of fans who are simply going to stop going to the shows, or they won't ever start going to the shows, right? When they otherwise might have, because the cost of attending these shows is too prohibitive for them. And I've talked about this in the past, for all the fans who have fallen off or are going to fall off as a result, or maybe they'll watch, but they simply won't pay for tickets anymore because they either just can't or they just can't justify some of these prices. I'm very curious in the next 5 years, 3 to 5 years, how different, if at all, the WWE audience looks. I think their audience, in terms of who is paying to come to these shows and what kind of fans they are, is radically going to change. I think the fan base is going to look different if they continue down this path. And maybe for them, that's a good thing. But I think it's just, whether you think it's a good thing or a bad thing is a subjective thing, but I think it's going to be very different. I think that's going to be a bad thing. But obviously for their bottom line, they feel differently. But there is a risk that the more they play around with these prices, you're going to take it one step too far. And you are going to chase away a lot of fans. They obviously haven't reached that point yet. They're still selling a ton of tickets, but the dam is going to burst at some point. And when it does, the ones on the hot seat are not going to be Ari Emanuel and Mark Shapiro. It's going to be people like Paul Levesque and Bruce Pritchard. I wouldn't even say Nick Khan. I think it'll be the ones who are sitting at the gorilla position every week. Those are going to be the first heads to roll. Because if you're Triple H, people talk about how WWE is overdoing it on the moments and the return pops. It's just about the returns, right? This year especially, it really is all about the moments now. Well, eventually you burn through all of those moments, and there's no one left to trot out there. But it makes sense why Triple H would be doing it so much, because it works. And because he's probably under a lot of pressure to keep delivering on those moments and keep those buildings packed. But when the car starts to slowly roll back down the mountain in reverse and you run out of big moments, what happens then? Right? He must feel like he's under the gun in a way that he never was before, because this is no longer a family business. This is a TKO business. And the minute business begins to falter, he's going to find himself on the hot seat as the one responsible for turning things around, because he's the chief content officer. I don't know that they see him as indispensable in the way that they see Dana White as being indispensable for the UFC. Dana White and UFC are synonymous. They are one and the same in the way that Vince McMahon was always one and the same with WWE. And he still would be one and the same with WWE. He would still be running WWE if he wasn't such a slimeball. But Dana White is clearly who he is trying to model himself after. He's trying to be to WWE what Dana White is to the UFC. That's why he's front and center all the time on these big shows and on WWE Unreal. And he just did Tony Hinchcliffe's show, Kill Tony. He's really putting himself out there. The more he does stuff like that, the more he sort of becomes one with the company. But you talk about ruthless. These people are ruthless. And Triple H is not Vince McMahon. The minute he slips up, the wolves are going to circle. I'm not saying it's going to be an instant thing, and I don't even know who you would replace him with, but there's always a scapegoat. Remember that. This bubble is bound to burst at some point, and when it does, he better watch out. But when you listen to these TKO people, one thing that is very clear to me, and this is true of WWE in general, is that they take their audience for granted. They do. They take the fans for granted. And when you take the fans for granted and you think that they'll always be there no matter what, you end up pushing too hard. And suddenly a lot of them won't be there anymore in the way that you thought they would be. At that same conference, Shapiro also said they hope WrestlePalooza is an annual recurring franchise for the company, and one that is both on par with two of their notable annual PLEs and becomes part of their big four events of the WWE year. He said, hopefully WrestlePalooza is a winner. If we can bring that back annually, that could be a marketing bonanza for us if we do that right. Adding that Paul Levesque is spending day and night creatively making what we think it can be another WrestleMania or another SummerSlam. He said the Royal Rumble is just below that level, and they feel WrestlePalooza could be in that quadrant. So all the people making fun of the WrestlePalooza name, it ain't going nowhere.